Have you done everything possible, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, to solve this problem, including asking for help? And if you can say, I've done all of that, I'll say great. But if you haven't done all of it, then there's still hope.
You're listening to Business Lunch with Roland Frasier. This is your seat at the table.
Welcome to the show. This is Darren Clark, the producer. If you're following Roland on Facebook, he's been doing a series of live Zoom calls this past week. We shared his personal strategy for surviving in business over the next 90 days on the last episode, so be sure to listen back to that. But today, we're sharing what Roland describes as one of the most important calls he's been on. Roland talks with John Assaraf, one of the leading mindset and behavior experts in the world. He takes a deep dive into how to get your head right in the midst of the growing pandemic, but also how to approach your employees and clients during this time. For the record, this call was recorded on March 21st, 2020. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you're subscribed and share the episode with your business leading friends. It will be entrepreneurs that help our world recover. Okay, let's get started.
Well, so I was just mentioning, John, that you and I were having a conversation the other day, and I was mentioning, some people are freaking out about everything that's going on right now, and some people are thriving in it. Some people are creating, opportunities. We just had a couple of calls on it. We had a call earlier today about getting funding so that if there's any money that's needed to kind of take you through a challenge, or if you've got sales fall off or anything like that while you're pivoting, that you can find some capital to support you. Then we had a call talking about several things that are working for people, and now we get to what's probably the most important of all the calls, which is how to think about all this stuff in the right way. And you've got so much experience and insight here. I'm really happy that you have hopped on. So, John, will you tell us a little bit about kind of how you are approaching this and how you're helping other folks that you're working with do this?
Sure. So I think most of you, you may know, but I look at stuff from a unique lens of, what's happening in this thing called our brain, right? Which is obviously the processor of all the information, and just understanding how it's working. So there's several layers to what I can go through. Obviously, there's myself and what I'm seeing and experiencing, and how am I responding to it during this extremely challenging time. I think it's a once in our lifetime event that's happening right now. How am I with my employees? And then what am I doing with my business clients as well who have employees? So I can give you a few different layers of that. From a purely neuroscience and neuropsychology basis, our brain is going to take a look at this coronavirus threat, that started off in China, shifted over to Europe, and is, heading here, Canada, South America, simultaneously right now. We're 2 weeks or so behind the curve of what we've just seen in China and what we're experiencing and seeing with, Italy's mass challenge that they have right now. But from a brain perspective, whenever we see this threat, we're going to move into the way the brain operates. Number one is we're going to do whatever we need to for our survival first if we believe that it's a threat. So for some people who say, oh my God, I might get coronavirus and I might die or I might get sick, we're going to take the measures accordingly to see what we can do to avoid it. But on the other spectrum, you have people that are, right now sitting in cafes or on the beach in Florida saying, this is effing nothing. It's not going to affect me. And they're operating from a state of probable ignorance, in my opinion, and they're not going to do very, very much. And so when we understand that survival is the first responsibility of the brain, avoidance of mental, emotional, physical, financial pain, conservation of energy is 2, and then what can we do to gain pleasure? That's the hierarchy of how our brain's making decisions. And so most people, if they're not trained in seeing threat and being skilled in what to do with it, they're going to automatically react. And because if they don't have the skill of either going through something like this, which many people don't, then they're going to have doubt, which breeds uncertainty, which triggers the fear center, which triggers people to react at the highest level of their training. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely.
Right. So the trained investor, the trained entrepreneur, the trained individual will be able to observe and either know who to ask or know what to do because they've been here before. So instead of reacting abruptly and irrationally, they can respond intelligently and rationally. Now, that requires two different parts of our brain. And most people just haven't been skilled at this. So the first thing that I'm doing for myself and my team is let's get calm. So many of you can see the two images I have here. I've got Einstein here on the right of me, and I've got Frankenstein's monster on the left of me. And the reason for that is when our fear, our stress, our anxiety center has been activated, Frankenstein's monster comes out. And Frankenstein's monster says, holy shit, what's going to happen to my business, to my clients, to my income, to my cash flow? Am I going to have to lay people off? Are clients going to be leaving? Will I have enough to survive? Will I be able to thrive? And when Frankenstein's active, Einstein's quiet. So the first thing to understand is both parts exist. They're within you. And what we have to do as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, is we have to be able to listen to both in a calm state so we can respond accordingly versus what I said before is react abruptly. So I've been talking with my team and saying, hey, is there a threat right now? Yes. In a calm state, we can say, okay, what does this threat represent to us individually, to our families, to our companies? Let's just get it out on the table so it's not swimming around in our head as probabilities which activate something that I call the what if switch. So what if, we don't make enough revenue? What if? And if that's running in your head without you stopping it and getting it out of your head, then you are going to keep releasing the neurochemicals of fear and anxiety and stress and irrationality and abrupt behavior. So I want my team and I to get it out of our head, and we want to list out what are all the potential threats. Let's get it out of here. We go, great. Are those possible? Yep, they are. So when I get it out of my head and I get Frankenstein on a sheet of paper, on a computer, on my whiteboard, and I say, hey, Einstein, can we come up with ways to mitigate this threat? Personally, what can we do? All of my team, you're quarantined in your homes, agree with that. So you're healthy, your family's healthy, good. Let's take care of the biggest threat first. So all of us are quarantined at our homes. Number one. Number two is, okay, cash flow. We're used to making sales and revenue every single day. That's changed in the last 7 days, 8 days. It's like, there's a little hiccup over here. Okay, what do we need to do? Okay, what expenses can we cut immediately? Okay, what can we do to make offers to clients that maybe are sitting on the fence a week ago? So now we start to come up with counter strategies to the threat. So we've taken the threat out of our heads, aka Frankenstein. We get Einstein involved in coming up with what are all the different ways that we can mitigate these threats. Then we come up with, ways for us to implement. Do we have the, financial, non-financial abilities to implement all of these things? If the answer is yes, great. Which one's the most important? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have a plan. Let's go and do that. Now what happens is people say, okay, we've seen what the potential threat is. We've talked about it. We've minimized it. We've planned for it. And now we have a plan to execute against time. And so what does that do to somebody's brain is we know what is going on. We know why it's happening. We know what we're going to do about it, how we're going to do it, who's going to do it by when. now have activated a variety of different parts of our brain, the limbic system, the emotional system, while I've quietened down the reptilian instinctual part of my brain that's activating this threat when I'm watching TV and radio and talk to my friends and everybody's worried. And now, the rates are going up here. So all of this stuff is happening, and without the mental and emotional self-control and awareness, we become victimized by all this input of negativity, whether you're watching this TV station or this radio or this newspaper or that. It's so overwhelming and confusing right now that you have to step back and get into control.
John, what does that media do to us? Like from a brain standpoint, does it just keep pulling us back into the reptilian deal? Is that what's going on?
Reptilian and limbic. So the sensationalism that is happening, on either camp is meant to activate the reptilian and emotional brain. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to overwhelm, confuse, and grab your attention. Many of them are masters of what all of us have learned how to do, is grab attention, right? The most important part of today's day and age, right, above all else, is interrupt and grab attention. All their headlines, all of their cliffhangers, all of their messages, all of their "this might happen" is geared towards penetrating our psyche so we don't flip the station, okay? And we pay attention to that. And if we happen to watch whatever station you happen to watch or read or listen to, it doesn't matter, you are being reinforced with those same messages over and over and over and over again. So if you take a look at what's happening in our country right now, last night there was a poll that came out that, and forget about what party you believe in or don't in the United States or Europe or Asia or Middle East, makes no difference. But let's say you happen to be mostly Democratic and you watch CNN. Over 70% of CNN, Democratic people believe there's a real threat with this virus. Only 40% of Republicans. Now, why? Most of the Republicans are watching Fox News. And if you've been watching Fox News for the last, 2 weeks, it's like, nah, this is nothing. It's overrated. It's a hoax. It's a media hype. And through that repetition, those neural networks have formed, and that becomes the basis of your beliefs and your reality. And now, guess what's happening? Now the messages switch from our White House and from some of the other news stations, and they're switching that reality so that over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, okay, they're going to be back online, and you're going to see those polls go to 50, 60, maybe 7% say, yeah, there's a threat here because now we're quarantined and a lot of people are dying. So this is a great lesson for us, all of us marketers, right, of the power of repetitive messages. If we repeat messages over and over and over and over again, eventually you go, holy, this must be true.
Right, exactly. So what are your thoughts that the fear or anxious reactions to this are actually habitual reactions from earlier trauma? Like, what if I lose my business? Implies that they have some mental relationship to the feeling of no business from the past, and panic seems like it's a memory. What are your thoughts about that?
Great. So there's two things to that, and that is this. Because we are creatures of herding and we love to work together, we have been biologically wired 2.5 million years of our own evolution of Homo erectus to Homo sapien walking on Earth, paying attention to each other. So if you see animals in the wild, you always see their ears up, and there's a whole bunch of them looking. And as soon as one of them gets up and takes off, they all do, because they've learned what the signals are for a reactive automatic behavior. Humans do the same thing. So that's part one. But part two is this. All emotions, of which fear is the biggest one that we have within our brain, are based on subconscious implicit memories. So what happens is any incoming information through our eyes, ears, kinesthetic, activates the subconscious memory, which then sends a signal to our conscious mind for us to be aware. But while it does that, it releases the cortisol, epinephrine, or norepinephrine, which causes this feeling that is unpleasant for us. So if we don't have the memory, okay, of the potential embarrassment, shame, ridicule, negative feeling and associations in our own memory bank, then we won't react that way. We're going to look to see how are other people reacting. And that's how we learn, through these social cues. But there's a lot of people, for example, let's say you grew up in a family where, somebody in your family, mother, father, both were entrepreneurs, and you saw the ups and downs, and you were taught, how to respond in tough times. You wouldn't react. You wouldn't have the exact same feeling around, a failure. You go, oh, okay, that's failure. We got to do this, and this. So a process because you learned the social cues, but you also saw the behavior and ultimately the results as well.
We have issues with pattern disruption, yes?
Well, we have issues with pattern disruption if we don't know, A, how to pattern disrupt ourselves, and then B, how to interrupt these disempowering patterns that are coming in through our senses to us. So when I watch TV, I like to go between a few different channels to see, let's say there's a topic like coronavirus. So I'll go from, CNN to Fox News to MSNBC, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's the same damn topic, and here it's this, and here it's this. And it's like, wow, this is just bizarre.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so the key, by the way, one of the keys is to know how to do research on the research. Because there's a lot of very, very smart people that are giving us information that's just flat out wrong. Mm-hmm. And so how do you choose who to listen to is a really critical thinking skill. I had just last night, my sister, posted this image of, it's almost like a transparent image of somebody's brain in their throat. And there's these little like coronaviruses on the throat. And the whole article was like, if you gargle with hot water, you'll kill the coronavirus. I'm like, I told my sister, get that off of your damn social media. It's bullshit. Are you out of your mind putting this on there?
Right.
No, it doesn't do that. Gargling with salt water and hot water or warm water will not kill, the coronavirus. She's like,
I know people, I beg to differ. I know people who have gargled with salt water who don't have coronavirus. Therefore, obviously. Which is the best way to pace a client that's possessed by fear into a solution mindset?
Awesome. So I wrote down, this is something I did a video for my own students around doubt and fear and anxiety and stress and what that does. The first thing is when somebody's in a state of doubt, fear, anxiety, discomfort, uncertainty, the first thing you have to do is calm them down. So before you try to get them to a solution, you have to deactivate the sympathetic nervous system, which has been activated. And so if that sympathetic nervous system has been activated and they're in this space where their left prefrontal cortex is not even active, or their imagination that you can show them a solution to, you have to take care of that first. So it's calm first before you lead to a solution. And so, a lot of times, with my own clients, and I've been talking to every single one of my private clients around the world, some of which, for example, one of them this morning, he's got 650 employees and his business is shut down. He's in the Netherlands. Business is shut down. And so I had to take him off the ledge because he's got a huge payroll. So the first thing we did is we talked about family. We talked about, what his plans are once the coronavirus is done and where they might go. So we have to get him off of the fear first.
So
get him off the fear train.
You're future pacing him there into it's okay, everything's okay, and we're past this scenario, which is pretty clever because it's future pacing, but future pacing with the desired outcome, right? To calm him down.
Yeah, well, I can also say, hey, before we get into that stuff, which I know is really important to you, how's your son? What are you doing with your son? Is your wife okay? Are you guys safe? So you got to take them off that ledge because, what happens is we get on these doom loop cycles, right? Mm-hmm. So we have these negative thoughts, negative emotions. We repeat those over and over again. And we think about what we feel what we think about. So unless you interrupt the pattern, somebody earlier said, something about pattern interrupting, unless we interrupt that pattern first, future pace them into, the future second, and then say, okay, that's where we want to go. Do you think we can do this and talk about this in a logical way that makes sense for the outcome that you want? Yeah, I think we do. So would you agree that we're better off staying calm so we can respond intelligently versus being in a state of fear or panic and we react abruptly and do things that maybe not in the best interest of our business?
Right. How do you approach purchasing businesses right now, or at a minimum acquiring some equity interest without coming across as a vulture? I'd love to get your take on it, and then I'll share mine as well.
What I've learned a long time ago is when somebody is in a state of distress, you helping them actually relieves their stress. And so the fact that you might be able to take over, whether it's a debt obligation of theirs, give them a little bit of money or not, or give them some future money or not, but you take away the mental pressure, the emotional pressure, the physical pressure, maybe the financial pressure, that's worth a lot to people, and in many cases, more than money, right? And so you're not coming across as a vulture if you are helping them out of a position that they have to get out of for one reason or another. So if you weren't the one who got them into the position, then you have no responsibility for the position they're in. Yeah. Now, can you do things in an ethical, professional, kind, caring way? Absolutely. One of the best people in the world that I know of is somebody that is right here, right now, and that's Roland. And so you do that from your heart of being fair and structured in a way that really helps them, but also takes care of what you can live with because it's fair to you too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, it's to me, there's no difference in how you're approaching now than how you normally approach, that you come in a consultative fashion so that you are saying, how can I add value? What can I do to help? And if it makes sense for some equity to come about, then that's where you go. But you don't come in as a vulture. I think that's it. And I think it's your mindset that's important here, that you realize that nothing has changed in the world with respect to how you're going to go about approaching something. There are people who want to sell all the time, coronavirus or not, who have not managed well or who've gotten into cash challenges or things like that. And so you're going to have that same normal business discussion that you're going to have with them and say, I mean, my approach is always, like John said, and I know he does this too. My approach is always, well, tell me a little bit about the business. What do you need? What do you want? Because if you approach a seller from we're going to try to get you what you want, and we're going to collaborate, as opposed to we're going to be on opposite sides of the table. I mean, in the legs thing, in our legs workshops, I sit down and I say, when I'm negotiating, I won't let them sit on the other side of the table. Yeah, I will actually move around. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Beside them, so that I'm talking like that instead of like that, just to show them that this is a collaboration, not a negotiation. And then we'll sit down and we'll say, okay, well, this is what you want. And then I highly recommend that you read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, because I think his thing is when they say something unreasonable, then you say, how am I supposed to do that? So
I love that.
In that situation, right? It's I'll take my business for $50,000 and say, okay, well, let's go through the numbers. Like John said, let's step back from the urgency and let's set the pace here. Let me find out a little bit about it. Maybe if that's something, is that what you really want to do? Now, for me, if they say, no, I hate this, I don't want to do it, but I just have to, because then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say, look, if this isn't for you an exciting, positive solution, then I'm not going to do a deal with you. Because I'll tell you what, my experience is that they will go out of their way, consciously or subconsciously, to sabotage the deal. They'll feel bad about you. They'll badmouth you after. And even if you did the best, most generous thing in the world, that getting them to realize that this is a good thing for them is really critical, which is, John, let's go back to that, because I'd love to get your take on that. Like how do we best, when we're talking to somebody who's freaked out, who feels like the sky is falling and they've got to sell their business and they're looking at you as the solution for that, how do we best approach their brain and mindset in a way that minimizes that potential resentment or subconscious cause of the deal later on?
So as I've been reading some of the comments, but also, as you've been talking, I've been thinking, when I was younger, I used to think that selling was doing something to somebody when I was 19 years old. And I had a very wise mentor who says, John, that's never the case. Selling is doing something for somebody. And if you're not doing something for them, then it's always going to feel like there's this predatory, salesperson's mindset. And so I just made a decision, 40 years ago, if I'm going to sell anything, I want people to feel like I'm doing this for you to help you achieve what you want. Forget about what my needs are. Now, in doing this for you, I have to have certain rules so that it makes sense for me as well. And is that okay with you? Mm-hmm. So I love to sell and position in a way that I'm always asking for permission, okay, to serve them, but also make sure that it makes sense for me and my business. And we may come to the realization together that this isn't the best thing for you, and I'm okay with that. But I want to really help you, and hopefully you understand that I have certain parameters of what I can and can't do, and that's how I approach it. So, that's part one. I used to have a business partner in one of my deals, and he used to always say, John, you love to help people and make money, but I like to make money and help people. And, and it's a totally different mindset, that little shift. And so I love to approach deals as I love to help people and hopefully we'll make some money, versus I want to make money, and if I help you, great. If I don't, screw you. Now, there's a couple of reasons. When I was building and grew Remax in India, I used to have 1,500 salespeople. And in a lot of our training, I used to share with them, I said, before a word is even said, and I'll prove this right now to every one of you, have you ever walked into a room and something is wrong, but if you say, hey, what's wrong? And people go, oh, nothing. And you go, no, come on, what's wrong? Have you ever said nothing's wrong, but something's wrong? If that's ever happened to you, type it in right now. You know what I'm talking about.
I've experienced that in my relationship, John. What's wrong?
Nothing. So there's something in psychology called a double binding message. And what that means is when I'm saying, oh, hey, I love you. Oh, I love you so much. And the back of your mind going, that's total. What are you talking about? Like, you don't love me. You don't even know me, right? So that's a double binding message where what I'm saying doesn't resonate with the truth of what I'm feeling. So I used to share with people, with my sales associates, I said, listen, if you ever have to make payment for your car, make the rent payment, and you're thinking about making that payment, making that sale because of what you need, don't make the call. Don't go out on an appointment until you say, stop. Let me be able to calm myself down so I could focus mentally, emotionally, and instinctually. So heart or mind, gut, and heart aligned for the other person's needs.
Yeah.
And if you show up, okay, mentally, emotionally, and let's say, I don't care, you want to say spiritually or, in your gut that I'm here to serve you and help you, then what comes out of your mouth, okay, is going to be congruent, and you won't seem predatory. You won't seem like you're trying to take advantage of them. And that's what I have found for myself works really, really well, is become congruent, okay, with the highest possible values of being a servant leader, servant sales, servant marketer, etc.
I love it.
One of the stories that I've been sharing with people right now, and the restaurant industry is obviously one of the toughest, and it's going to get hammered even more with tens or hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of employees being let go, and so we know that that's a real probability for a lot of people, and cash flow is what keeps a lot of these businesses going. However, there's a frame I'd like to teach all of you that I already started using very, very successfully, and you can all borrow it as long as we're not doing it at the same time. But here in California, like just down the street where I live in Roland as well, a lot of people surf. And if you ever go and take a surfing lesson, the instructors will tell you, or they'll take you onto the sand. They'll say, okay, what you want to do, I want you to lay down on the board, and I want you to pretend that you're pointing, back to the beach. And then I want you to stand up, or I want you to paddle really fast and stand up and then catch the wave and come into shore. But what they sometimes tell you and sometimes don't is that every amazing wave catcher realizes that they have to paddle way before the wave is underneath them. And so they need to be able to foresee when the wave is coming so that they can paddle just at the right time to catch that wave. And so business owners are the exact same thing. That right now, we've just had a major storm crashing the shores and still crashing the shores. But the trained surfer, okay, is going to get back out there, and they're going to be prepared, waiting for that wave so that they can paddle and catch that wave. So what we're doing with all of our business owners is we are future pacing what they need to do now to prepare for that wave. And which do you want to be? Do you want to keep missing the waves? Okay, did you miss the 2008 wave, whether it was for real estate or the stock market or your business growth because you waited too long and you weren't prepared? Well, yep. You can catch the wave now. And yes, there's going to be a lot of businesses in your industry that will not make it. And I feel bad for them, awful. And there's also a really smart way to position yourself now, that if we take the next 30, 60, 90 days to plan, prepare, while everybody is running for the hills, you'll be able to catch the wave and build your business bigger, better, faster than ever before.
So, John, would you say the prospects don't want to take any meetings right now because they're in confusing times? Is that kind of how you would address that, what you just said?
Well, yes, and so first I need to understand, I have a totally different definition of confusion, right? So confusion, the way I look at it, is concepts getting fused. And when we are fusing, everything that's happening, it's causing an overwhelmed feeling. And so I always want to understand, first respectfully, I said, I totally get what you're feeling now. Do you mind if we have a separate discussion right now? What are you seeing in the marketplace right now? I want to know what's causing, their fear center, stress center to be triggered. Are they misinformed? Is it their what is causing the I don't want to talk to you, meet with you right now? Like, what's causing that? So here's what I've always shared with people. And this is amazing how this happens. People who don't have money, magically find money when they get the stock tip from their brother or sister or friend or their taxi driver because they have a really great tip.
Right.
And so, when they're in this fear, uncertain state, when they're in that state, then they are in the stress response state of lack and limitation versus abundance. And so a lot of times, I'll ask them, I said, listen, I get that. I respect that. I understand that. However, I want to shift them over. I said, if there was a way that this wouldn't cost you any money, would you be interested in seeing how you can get X more leads or X more money? And if they say, well, yeah, if it doesn't cost me any money, then I'm interested. I said, great. Can I just share with you some stuff that I know I can show you how to do? And so the purpose of the first call or the email is not to get them to buy anything. It's to get them to be open-minded enough to talk with you. And so if I can get them off of spending money, which is their objection, into let's just talk so I can show you some stuff that won't cost you any money. So if you think about this, if for every dollar that you gave me, I could show you how to make $2 with very, very low risk, almost to no risk, how many dollars would you find?
That's great.
Like, how many would you find? If I could show you for every dollar you put into the slot machine in Las Vegas, you can get $2 out. How many dollars would you get to go to Las Vegas to the slot machines? Right? So as soon as I can get you shifted off of why you won't, and I get you shifted on, the other emotional greed part of your brain, I've just changed your frame. And now I've got an audience that'll talk to me. But what you can't do, and this is one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned, is get out of the convincing business when somebody's locked and loaded with their thought. You have to interrupt their pattern and frame first before you can introduce a new frame.
That's great. I love it.
The words you use, cause emotions, right? And the emotions either give them a go signal or a stop signal. So if they're going stop, the words you use created an image and a frame for them in order to stop, right? So you sold them on stopping. What we want to create is language patterns that get them to get off of their frame where they've stopped because of whether it's their overwhelm, confusion, fear, doubt, anxiety, uncertainty. I go, I agree with you. That makes total sense. Now, if this was possible, where there's zero risk to you, and it can actually help you recover faster than before. No money. There's like no money on your part. Would you at least talk to me for 10 minutes? And I know you're not ready right now. That's okay. But all people who are smart in business prepare for the future, right? So you have to just change some of the frames.
And I think getting that agreement to those statements like that, or the how many dollars would you find, and would you agree that all smart business people looking to plan in the future, that should be very helpful. Cool. And let's talk about dealing with people who are afraid they're going to go out of business. Now we're on people on that red line that are frozen. They're just not doing anything because they think that they're done. What would you say about that? Anything different from what you've talked about on the other things?
No. Well, we have to help them understand. First, we have to help them understand that there's nothing wrong with you. Being afraid is a normal reaction. And if you're afraid and you're shutting down that part of your brain that you actually need right now to help you solve the problem, you're going to be afraid, which means you're going to be thinking and feeling and behaving in ways that are congruent and consistent with fear. Right? And for most people, fear is not a really good state to be in for too long, because they're either going to fight it, they're going to freeze, they're going to run away, or they're going to faint. One of those four things happen. And so most people are paralyzed by fear. And so what we have to do is, somebody who's in a state of fear, we have to first help them deactivate their fear center in their brain. And then we can say, okay, I understand, I validate, I agree that this is a possibility. But are you open for me to show you another possibility that with the right thinking and planning and action, you can have a different outcome? Are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared to at least be aware of this, but let's go here for just a moment. Let me show you how this works so you can make a wise decision having both options. Fear and stress and panic, okay, and go down the drain, or calm and knowledge and skill and responsiveness to give you your best chance of survival. Which one do you want to focus on? Because you cannot focus on both at the same time. Sometimes fear is real. When it's imaginary, it's a possibility. But right now, the probability for a lot of restaurants and business owners, if they're not capitalized, okay, is they will be out of business. I mean, that's fact. Now, what I always like to share with people is this. Hey, listen, based on what I've seen, what you've told me, and the analysis that I've helped you with, there's a chance, a good chance that you're not going to be in business. And that's just the truth. However, let me ask you, and I use this all the time. If I asked you, and this is a question for every single one of you, and I'll just play it along with you, and I'll show you an extreme case that I take to some clients when I have to. Can all of you think of one person that you really, really, really love beyond measure? One person right now? Just one person. Doesn't make it, and not you, though. Somebody else. Okay?
Yes.
Can you all think of one person? I'm assuming you're all going to say yes, your kids. What if I said to you this? Now, I know that the situation is really bad. I know that it's hard, maybe impossible to figure out. But what if I said to you, if we don't figure out how to turn this thing around in the next 30 days, 90 days, whatever the window is, you will never see your kids, your father, your sister, your brother, your wife, your husband, whoever. You will never see them again. Would you think differently about the problem right now? Would you ask for help from people that you might be embarrassed to ask for help from? Would you come up with all the ways that you could solve the problem? Would you do everything possible? How would you think? How would you behave? Whose help would you ask? Now, I always share with people, I said, have you done everything possible, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, to solve this problem, including asking for help? And if you can say, I've done all of that, I'll say, great. But if you haven't done all of it, then there's still hope. And if I could help them see that maybe there's a little bit of hope, because if they didn't, in an imaginary scenario, they would not see the person that they loved the most. The pain of that is going to be greater, okay, than the pain of doing everything it takes. And what I've discovered over the years is people give up way, 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 way before they should, because either they don't know how, they don't have the knowledge or the skill themselves, and they're too embarrassed to ask for help.
Love it. One thing to help all of you that are, I think if you take all of the really brilliant stuff that John's talked about, and then you can get them out of the place of emotion where they won't be able to listen to you and hear any logic. If you can do that first.
Well, you want to move them off of the disempowering emotion of fear.
Exactly.
And you want to move them to the empowering emotion of hope.
Exactly. And so if you, I just shared this is kind of how we're walking people through this. So if you say there are 4 really important things in your business that you need to look at. The very first is finance, because if you don't have money, you're not going to be around to last for anything else. So right off the bat, we want you to think about maximizing your credit. Look at securing lines of credit. There's SBA, $50 billion that's been made available. There are 30-year 2% and 3% loans that are out there now. Then run everything like a turnaround. If they're having trouble, you can walk them through this. And so I would encourage you guys to take this. And if you've got people that are not talking to you, say, look, I've got it all figured out. I've got a worksheet to walk you through. And then you can use this to start your conversation. So use a combination of what John said to get them into the ability to actually think logically. And then now they're in their Einstein brain. You're saying, we're going to do a 14-day cash plan. That's looking at all the inflows and outflows. We're going to keep, and this is important for you to tell them, I want you to keep all of the helpful and necessary expenses, because as you go forward, you're going to still need all those things. So like, for example, coaching or training or masterminds and stuff like that. And then walk through what they can do to accelerate cash collection. Then with people, they're going to need to communicate with their team, their customers, their suppliers, and any lenders. With the team, they want to communicate to them and delegate to those people the ability and empower them to help solve customer challenges. With the customers, you want to get ahead of the cancel so that you actually talk about all the stuff that John's been talking about. Would you agree that smart people plan for the future and successful people plan for the future? Would you agree that if you had a slot machine that put out $2 for every dollar you put in, you would be able to find more dollars? And that's a conversation you can have with your customers, or if you're consulting, you can help your clients and customers talk with theirs. Then with suppliers, reach out and defer, or if they won't defer, have them offer you a discount to buy. I know we have no problem paying our rent coming up. We have a $70,000 a month rent at one of our businesses. We just emailed the landlord today and said, hey, with all the stuff that's going on, would you be willing to defer for 30 days? Now, all that does is it means another $70,000 that we have available to take advantage of opportunities now, knowing we still need to pay the rent at the end of the month. But if we didn't have that 70 to pay that rent, we would have just gotten for just asking 30 days. I know American Express is deferring. Lots and lots of creditors are willing to do this right now. So with lenders, you can either double down and increase credit lines or restructure payments. Then number 3, operations. If you've got any kind of migrations or tech deployments that you're doing that are going to disrupt your business, what a perfect time. And if you're in either of those businesses, then you say, look, the things that we're going to work on and the things that I'm trying to get you to take action on today are going to actually cause disruption in your business. There's never been a more perfect time than when sales are down, because it's not going to disrupt as much. And if you've got things that you need to do in your operations because cash is tight, don't fire your people. Give them hour reductions or furloughs, or convert them to performance pay. And increase your employee trainings. Now is a great time to learn. Now is a great time to build SOPs, standard operating procedures, which will help you increase the value and performance of your business. To automate things that you hadn't automated before. It's also a great time to buy media assets in other businesses. And then in marketing, it's time to do high touch trainings and onboardings, highly personalized. If you have more time now because sales are fewer, then you have more time to spend taking good care of your customers. And then leaning into your marketing and advertising, because let's see, in the last great recession, which was 2008, 2009, the average company reduced spending by 13% on advertising. But that throughout history, throughout the last 100 years, has been a huge mistake. In the 1920s, Post was the dominant cereal brand. They're not anymore. They didn't spend. They cut their spending by half, and Kellogg's doubled down on spending. And that launched Kellogg's as being the number one cereal brand, which they've not lost since then. In the 70s, Volkswagen had a significant share of the market, but Toyota got ranked with them as having the best mileage. And that recession, if any of you recall, was primarily due to rises in oil prices because of OPEC controls. And Toyota was able to dramatically take market share from Volkswagen. In the 2000 dot-com bust, you had Pepsi and Taco Bell were fighting against McDonald's. Pepsi owned, I think at the time, those franchises, but it was Taco Bell versus McDonald's, and Taco Bell increased spending. McDonald's cut back. Taco Bell, I believe they ended up gaining 60% market share, and McDonald's lost 28%. And then in 2008, 2009, Amazon increased spending and was able to have a dramatic growth. And ultimately, that was, I believe, when they were able for the first time to sell more online books than books were sold at all physical bookstores. So lean into your marketing and advertising. And then with your existing clients, find things that you can sell them. Turn to consulting. If you're selling them products, start selling them consulting and help them through this time. Show them how to use the products better. Figure out where you can add value. And in terms of your offers, think about 0% financing. Think about coupons and discounts. We're giving away free copies of digital, or free access to Digital Marketer Lab for the next 30 days. We've, over the last 5 days, added almost 14,000 new accounts doing that. So, or you can take in it, we're expensive, but we're worth it if you're in the luxury brand side. But all of these steps are steps that you guys can take to get your customers talking to you and starting to take action. And I think using a combination of what John was talking about and a sheet like that, and create your own, use mine, I don't care, whatever helps you, can really make a huge difference.
Can I just piggyback on two things for you? When somebody's in a state of uncertainty, doubt, panic, fear, etc., what it should say to you when they're worrying is, I don't know how to navigate through this, so I'm in a state of panic and fear and doubt and worry. Now, if you come to them and saying, I understand how you feel, I know, and let me show you a process that you don't have that can help you stop feeling this way and thinking this way. If you see what Roland just did, like if you imagine, Roland sitting down with somebody who's doubtful, fearful, panicky, doesn't know what to do, and Roland says, I understand. You're feeling the right things, and this is great. However, you don't have to feel this way anymore. Let me show you something that you may not have or you may not be doing. And as soon as you can show them something that they don't have, most of them don't have the charts and the graphs and the methodologies and the processes and the systems that a really good, let's say, consultant would have. And so when you can show them like, oh my God, I don't have that, maybe there's hope here.
Yeah. Now,
all of a sudden, you just shifted them to say, okay, if there's hope, I'm going to listen to you. But in the absence of hope, I'm going to stay stuck on my fear state. So that was the one thing I wanted to share with you there. The other thing is you mentioned something about, advertising. I just found, yesterday from our media buying group that Facebook auctions is finally cheaper now because all the big boys are out right now.
Yeah, right? And that's the thing, John. To me, it's amazing because one of the conversations I have with some of the war room members who are talking about, I'm going to pull back on spending. Like, in addition to that history, and I'm going to publish a full timeline of those for you guys tomorrow. But in addition to that history, just imagine if nothing had happened right now, if there was no coronavirus, and suddenly your biggest competitor said, we're just not going to spend that much right now. We're just going to kind of take a break. And then at the same time, Facebook and Google and all of the other ad places that you're running ads on those channels said, you know what, we're going to lower all our prices for a while. Would you not be freaking excited to double, triple the spend that you've got on marketing? Because that's exactly what's happening right now. Nothing has changed. There's still people buying. So your competition has said, we're taking a break, and Zuckerberg and the Googles and everybody else have said, hey, we're on sale, and you're going to stop or cut back? That makes no sense at all, right?
Yeah. We've actually just added spend to several other funnels that we have because this happened, exactly almost the same way last time. When everybody is stopping, waiting, and watching, and advertising is on sale, we know what we could do with leads. And whether it takes me 30 days or 6 days or 9 days, this will pass. If I can get them into my orbit, I can convert them into positive ROI one way or the other over time.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking
my friend.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they would like to find out more about mindset stuff and all that kind of goodness?
They could actually pick up my book, Inner Size, my new best-selling book on how to take advantage of your brilliant brain. But I'm on Instagram at John Assaraf. I'm on Facebook fan page and on Twitter. So.
And if you want to see great ski pictures that give you ski snow envy, then follow John on Instagram. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.